just like a headless chicken. Oh, okay, it's recording. Okay, so so what then is the purpose of Dhamma practice? Okay, so earlier on, some of you mentioned it is to be enlightened, it is to have a guide and things like that. But then ultimately, if I were to ask you, what then is the purpose of having a guide? So if we keep asking why, we'll reach the point where we find out what exactly is our own purpose in practicing Dhamma. Okay, so then the next thing is, do you know how your mind works? Because the secret that the Buddha unlocked was how the mind works, how our mind works. And because our mind works in the same fashion, in the same pattern, and that is what we exactly are learning as Buddhists. Then also the bigger question is whether or not we as individuals discriminate. And when I mean discriminate, later on we will realize that, or later on we will be covering some things where we unknowingly discriminate, whether we like it or not. That is what our mind tend towards. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes it may cause some problems that we face in life. And then of course, what do all these things mean? So these are just some questions that I would like to pose to you first, just some reflection questions that you can think about as we go through this very quick sharing. Now, yes, so Dhamma. So earlier on we mentioned, or I mentioned a lot about Dhamma, but do we really know what Dhamma is? So I think some of you mentioned Dhamma is meant to help us to gain enlightenment and things like that. So is that really the Dhamma that all of you are pursuing? Because all of you now, I believe, are doing some form of practice, even attending this talk, attending the Sunday services with Buddhist Reborn. There must be some purpose that you guys believe, okay, being here is going to help me in a certain way. If not, I wouldn't be here. I would be maybe spending my Sunday morning having brunch in a cafe, or I don't know, cooking lunch or something. There must be something that has drawn you to here today. And I want to just ask you what exactly it is. There must be something. There must be a purpose in which you are here today. There must be a purpose in which you are pursuing the Dhamma. So what then exactly are you pursuing? Okay, so that's just something for you to think about. Virya, you want to mention something?
No.
Okay, yeah. So I think to most people, I believe fundamentally we all believe that that Dhamma can somehow or rather make us happy in some way. That we feel that we'll be happier, more joyful people when we learn Dhamma, and that is not wrong, and that is not wrong. Or even I've heard from people that have shared that the purpose of them learning Dhamma is because they want to be free from suffering. If you guys are familiar with the Four Noble Truths, or earlier on, even just now, for somebody who wants to attain Nibbana and would like to be enlightened. But the question is, enlightened to what? What exactly are we being enlightened to? Okay, so I just want to make it very clear that each time when we recite this line, Dhammang saranam gacchami, it is to remind ourselves that we want to go to the Dhamma as refuge. And it is a deliberate choice that we all make. And the reason why we make this choice is because we believe that the Dhamma, whatever the Dhamma is, can help us to be happy, and it can help us to be happy by allowing us to be free from sufferings. Okay, so in general, the purpose of learning Dhamma is to know the way to end suffering. And that's the purpose of learning Dhamma. Now, the purpose of practicing Dhamma is to actually end suffering. Now, we all know that if some of you may be exposed to various Buddhist concepts or even Buddhist philosophy, you may know things like there are many concepts like anatta, karma, and things like that they are very nice for intellectual discussion. But the Buddha wasn't concerned with intellectual discussion. The Buddha was mainly concerned about using these concepts to help us to gain freedom of mind. And what I mean by the freedom of mind, it is to end the sense of suffering. And this suffering may not be like a big suffering, but it can be as small as boredom, irritation when someone says something that triggers you, or something that doesn't go your way, or maybe even having the need to wear mask when you walk outside. That kind of small unpleasantness feeling that arises. Now, the Buddha teaches us how to go about fixing those problems. And we fix those problems by practicing and by learning the Dhamma. Now, we all know these Four Noble Truths, and we probably can memorize it in English and maybe in Bahasa, even in Pali sometimes. I don't know. Do you all recite the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta? At times, I believe maybe yes. Yes, you do. Nice. So if you recite that, this is literally like the core of Buddhism. You cannot get any more deeper into Buddhism than the Four Noble Truths. And we know that the Four Noble Truths are all these four. You can probably memorize this. The origin of Dukkha, how to end Dukkha, and the path to end Dukkha. Now, but although we know all this, especially the second one, where we know that the origin of Dukkha is something internal. But when something happens in your life, when you're unhappy, when you are sad, or better still, if you are angry, okay, maybe before that, a show of hands. Okay, I can't really see all of you, but you can use any way that you want. You can put in the chat box, or you can give me a thumbs up or whatever. Maybe just a show of hands. How many of you here are attached? Attached meaning that you have a partner, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, or some of you maybe searching in Buddhist Reborn. Maybe you can find one there. Anybody? Nobody?
What?
How many of you here are attached, meaning that you have a partner, a boyfriend, a girlfriend?
No, I'm not.
No. Okay, I saw almost was looking for someone, but now I'm okay. Now, the reason why I bring that up, because from personal experience, the Four Noble Truths is extremely useful, and the Four Noble Truths is very, very applicable for me when it comes to relationships. Okay, but that aside, in normal daily life, especially when, say, in times that we get angry, I'm pretty sure everybody here has gotten angry. I'm pretty sure. I'm quite sure. Okay, unless maybe you are a hidden arahant among us, then maybe not. But a regular person like you and me will probably get angry at some time. And when we get angry, what do we tend to do? Means that because when we are angry, we have some form of suffering within us. I mean, it's not a nice feeling of being angry. Now, this feeling within us, whenever we are feeling angry, what do we do? Do we start to look inwards, or do we start to look outwards? Now, in general, there are a few things that people do whenever they feel unhappy. Number one, they either point finger. They will say, this person made me angry. That person didn't follow what I say. That person did something against me. And this is what I call the finger pointing method. And this is very, very easy to do. And it's very easy for some of us to fall into. Now, this is one extreme. One extreme meaning that you just look and you just blame the external world. Now, I've also heard from some friends that they do a second method. It's called blame oneself. And then when I ask them, why did you choose to blame yourself? And they tell me, because I'm Buddhist. First thing I want to make it clear, Buddhists don't blame themselves. Just because we say that Buddhists don't point fingers, it doesn't mean that they point to themselves. Okay. As a Buddhist, we recognize that when something happens, it is based on causes and conditions. Now, what I mean by causes and conditions, there must have been something that someone else did, and you reacted in a certain way that makes you unhappy. So both parties are then, I wouldn't say at fault, but both parties caused this whole thing to happen. Now, this is going to be very, very important, because as Buddhists, we need to be very, very clear what are the conditions that allow for something to happen. Meaning that we don't assume, we don't say, oh, it is purely your fault, oh, it is purely my fault. Now, it is important now to look at conditions. Conditions meaning that what are the causes and conditions that make us happy or unhappy. Because it's a bit like going for an operation. You don't want to go to an operation and then the doctor tell you, oh, I'm sorry, I kind of operated on the wrong organ. I'm supposed to operate on your kidney, but I operated on your liver. You wouldn't want that. So whenever we are looking at issues, we have to look at the important issues that directly links to whatever that we are facing, and we try to avoid assumptions if we can. Okay, now the problem is this. the problem is we are not objective all the times. We may be caught up with emotions, and in Buddhism, we call this ignorance. And this ignorance is not that we are all foolish, but it's just that there are some things that when we are emotional, we don't tend to see. That we somehow get clouded. Now, then the question is, how come there is this clouding in our minds? And it is this thing called atta. Atta. I think many of you may have already been exposed to this term atta, in contradiction or opposite from the term anatta, which means non-self. So this atta is quite interesting in a sense that it will always creep into our lives, knowingly or unknowingly. Now, when our mind is conditioned by ignorance, or just now I was mentioned the not knowing, it drives actions to fulfill things like greed, things like attachment. We pursue these things, not knowing that they may be harmful to us. And if I were to just take atta and if I were to just compare to Dhamma, Dhamma literally is, just now I was asking you guys, right, what is Dhamma? So Dhamma is literally how life works. As simple as that. Some people call it the universal truth. Some people claim that it is the teachings of the Buddha. Not wrong, because Dhamma is literally how life works. And with this, we know that if we were to follow the way life works, naturally, we will be happy. The problem is if we go against how life works, then that is where problems will come up. Now, then does this mean that whatever that the Buddha teach, or more like, does it mean that you must follow the teachings of the Buddha? If not, you will suffer? Because it seems like if I don't follow Dhamma, I'm going to suffer. No, it doesn't work that way. It is for us to see for ourselves what exactly is Dhamma. So again, I mentioned the way that the world works is called Dhamma. So whatever there is in this world can be considered as Dhamma, meaning to say that the world is Dhamma. How the world works is Dhamma. The principle behind how the world works is Dhamma. It's a bit like science. Gravity is just gravity. It doesn't mean that, just because I don't believe in gravity, then I can fly. It doesn't work. It is just the way life is. Now, in this way, and when we compare it to this thing called atta, now, this is where our mind likes to be conditioned. We love this feeling. We love being known as Danry. We love being known as Virya. We love this name and this I that we hold onto very, very tightly. Now, this, as we live through our lives, whether from birth and all, right, we are conditioned with this sense of self within us, this atta within us, and this notion that we call I, Danry, me. In this flow of life from day to day, it is what we term as atta. And if you realize a lot of issues and a lot of things that we face today, it is due to this thing called atta. Whenever we think about this, for example, what do I want today? What do I own today? What do I want? What do I want to do today? What do I desire? And what do I possess? It is always about the I. And this sense of I that arises, it is due to what we call in Buddhism ignorance, avijja. So just now earlier on, when you all recited the Buddha Nusati, you mentioned that the Buddha is a vijja charana sampanno. So somebody who knows. But for us, we are opposite. We are not vijja charana. We are avijjas. So we are for now, we don't know yet. And that is why we want to investigate further what we don't know and what we ought to find out. Okay, so the thing is this: when comes into the picture with what we call Dhamma, then this thing called kilesa comes up. Kilesa, or in Sanskrit is klesha, also known as defilements. So these defilements are what we call the things that make us unhappy in general. Okay, and then of course, then that's where we start to experience dukkha. So this is something that I think it should be relatable to most of us, because assuming that there are no hidden Buddhas, hidden Arahants among us. So what we ought to do is to look at people who have already been liberated, such as maybe the Buddha, the Arahants, the way they live in a way that there is no I. So the life of the Buddha, the life of Arahants, they're just living Dhamma. So they're just following the way in which the world is. And because of that, because there is no resistance to that, there is no contradiction to that, they live in complete peace, they live in complete happiness. Now, that means that whenever we as individuals have unhappiness that arises in us, it is because of this resistance with the Dhamma. So there is this famous line. Do I have it here? Oh yes, I have it here, and I also included in Basa. I think I took it from some translation, so I'm not too sure whether this is the correct translation, but I'm quite sure that all of you might have already seen this. If you want to know how to be as happy as the Buddha, as joyful and as peaceful as the Buddha, you just need to look at this line here. Okay, one who sees the Dhamma sees me, one who sees me sees the Dhamma. Which means that all the Buddha is saying is, if you want to live like me, all you need to do is to see the Dhamma. Now, we know that we have, okay, I don't have my books here, but we know that earlier on we have seen the suttas. Just now you recited Mangala Sutta and things like that. You have seen the sutta, but have you actually seen it? So seeing in Buddhism is a very, very big thing. Now, when we say see Dhamma, we mean that as Buddhists, we want to see the truth. Okay, and seeing the truth here is extremely important. I don't know why I highlighted that. Is the word melihat, does it mean to see or to look? Okay, yes, correct. Okay, so I got it right. So I was guessing which word means see. But okay, so the main thing here as Buddhists, we always have to remind ourselves the main thing in the Buddhist path is to see clearly, not to be muddled, not to be clouded, not to be fooled by anything. We want to make sure that we see. And on this point, I want to bring up this point that we also mentioned Buddhang, saranam, gacchami. So Buddha, what exactly does Buddha mean to you? Anybody? The word Buddha. I mean, if you guys call yourself Buddhist, right? So the word Buddhist came from the word Buddha.
The awakened one.
Okay, the awakened one. But okay, Elena, you want to say something?
The enlightened one.
Okay. I mean, okay, fair. That's a translation of it. Okay, the awakened one, the enlightened one. Now, the issue is this. The issue is whether is it awakened or enlightened. The question is awakened and enlightened to what? What did the Buddha see that we cannot see yet? What is it? So, and that's something that we want to move into later. Okay, now just random fact that I think that there's a need to know. The word Buddha came from the word bujjati, which means to wake up. Literally, when you're sleeping and then you wake up. So there must be something that has led the Buddha to wake up, and all of us somewhat still sleeping and dreaming and in our own worlds. So what exactly makes this difference? And in this quote, we can see that it is about seeing the Dhamma. Okay, so far I hope everything has been okay with you. Okay, so this is just something about seeing, that whatever that we see, we have our own way of perceiving. So you can have two people seeing the same thing, but take it very differently. Okay, and I give you one very classic example of a comic. So you can check this out. It's an old couple, and then the guy says, in the moonlight, and because it's at night, in the moonlight, your teeth looks just like pearls. And then of course, then the female will ask, who is Pearl? And what were you doing in the moonlight with her? So you can see that just from that one line, in the moonlight, your teeth look just like pearls. He meant literal like pearls, oyster pearls. But the female assumed that pearl is somebody else that the guy is seeing. So our mind works in this very, very interesting way, that we tend not to take things as it is, and we tend to add our own things into it. We tend to add our own assumptions, we tend to add our own biases into how we see the world. The Buddha was different. The Buddha learned a way that he could see things as it is without allowing their assumptions and their biases to come into the picture. And that's something that we're going to dive into and possibly eradicate, hopefully, by the end of the sharing. So, anybody familiar with this term in Pali? Yatha Bhutang Jnana Dasanam. Nobody?
I don't know what is that.
No? Okay. So this one, okay, again, I put out the translation from Dhammacakka Sutta. Here, where the end goal, the end goal in Buddhism is to be able to see and to know things as they are. Meaning, and here when he says as they are, meaning that you see things just as is. You don't add your own assumptions, you don't add your biases, you don't add your own stereotypes into it. Which is why we are today. Which is why today we are going to discuss on the nature of our discriminating mind. Now, just now I mentioned that when we see things, we see through a lens. Okay, I mean, for those of you that don't wear glasses, you don't literally see things through a lens, but your eye has a literal cornea lens. But either way, whenever we interact with the world, we see through a pair of lenses. We don't just see it raw. Now, the Buddha and the Arahants, they see things raw because their lenses are clear. Now, when we say that that our lenses are stained, so earlier on when you mentioned when you guys recited the Mangala Sutta, there is this verse that says Chittang yasa nakampati asokang virajang kemang, which means which part of it means that the enlightened ones are people that are stainless, virajang, people that don't have dirt. And when I mean don't have dirt, is because the way that they see things are stainless. This lens that they're having is completely pure. So when they see a cup, they know it's a cup. When they see a person, they know it as a person, and not adding their own assumptions and biases. Now, this is the important where we got to ask ourselves, whenever we look at the world, or even when we look at a person, let's just say, when we look at a person, do we naturally draw some assumptions, biases, or stereotypes? So one very good example, I think most of you probably have never seen me before. When you first saw me, when I suddenly appeared on your screen, were there any assumptions that you made? Were there any biases that that you were holding on to? Were there any stereotypes that you were making, not just of me, but of anybody else whom you might interact with? Okay, and these assumptions, biases, and stereotypes may be true, but as individuals, we need to recognize that these are actual assumptions and biases that we are making. Because if we don't, and if we take it as the complete truth, then that is where we will fall into the trap of ignorance. Okay, so if you can say, okay, maybe in some parts of my life I make assumptions, some parts of my life I am biased in some way, then it's the very first step, recognize that the nature of our mind is that we tend to discriminate. Now, at this point, I'm not saying that you're a horrible person, because we all discriminate. It is human nature to discriminate. You discriminate, I discriminate. When I first see you, when you first see me, we form judgments. And when you hear me speak, or when I speak to you, or when you speak to me, again, we form judgments. Not wrong, but the question is, how then do we ensure that this doesn't lead us astray? Okay, so okay, this is just one of the quotes from one of a very famous sutta, where the Buddha mentions that whatever view that you hold on to as his students, so again, as his students, so I presume that we are all students of the Buddha, whenever we are looking at the Dhamma in general will never ever encourage you to quarrel with anyone. Okay, because the view of the Dhamma is one that is free from perplexity. Okay, important thing, it is stripped of worry. So you do not need to worry about it, and it will remove craving. Craving for what? Craving to always prove that we are right. Okay, so now, so we are moving into this discriminating mind where we realize whenever we discriminate, it is usually because it is something that we want to be proven right. We hate to be wrong. We don't like the feeling of being wrong. We want to be right. But in the Buddha's teaching, wanting to be right is not always the way to go. The main thing, as he mentioned in the first line, one does not quarrel with anyone in this world. So even if someone is different from you, even if someone disagrees with you, now how then do we react to it? Are we going to allow our discriminating mind to continue to discriminate, or can we do something about it? Oops. So now, yes. So now that we know that we might subconsciously discriminate, meaning that we know it or we don't. The question is, why then do you think that we will discriminate? Or why do you think that we will form judgments? You can share with me verbally or in the chat box. Now, if you think about it, when you first see somebody, we have recognized that we tend to judge. We will discriminate. But why? The question is, the key thing in Buddhism is to always ask why. How come we have this tendency to do so?
Because we don't live in the present.
Okay.
We always worry for the future or have regrets in the past.
Okay. So thanks for sharing. Is your name Dharma?
Yes, my name is Dharma.
Wow, there's a beautiful name. Wow, I realize a lot of people here have a very nice name.
Thank you.
Like Dharma, Virya, extremely Buddhistic names. So Dharma, you are the embodiment of the truth. Okay, but anyway, yes. So you're the So now, why? So earlier on, you mentioned that we discriminate because we don't live in the present moment. We live in the past, or we dream about the future. Now, that is kind of right, because it must be because of something that we anticipate in the future that we probably discriminate. And the reason why we discriminate is because of something that we have heard before, seen before in the past, that has formed this perception. Okay. Now, but living in the but this is the thing. If you live in the present moment, means that you know this is the present moment, but you draw from the past and you anticipate the future, but you're still in the present moment, naturally you will still discriminate. So the issue here is when we attach ourselves to past impressions and attempt to extrapolate to the future. Okay, but you think about it, based on survival, do you think that there is a need do you think that there's a need for discrimination for human survival?
Yes, I think.
Okay, and why? Why and how?
Yeah, to anticipate the bads and the goods. I think
okay.
it's best for, as we live as a human, right? As we live as a human, we need to survive our own.
Yep.
That's why to get out of the problems, sometimes you have to discriminate. It's more like we have to be careful.
Okay. So it is all about being careful, in some ways careful, where we want to make sure that we are able to differentiate between what is good for us or safe and what is probably dangerous for us. And that's why we tend to discriminate. Okay. Now, that has served us very well in the past thousands and thousands of years when we were still in survival mode. But in today, what the Buddha is suggesting is we have to take a step back and ask ourselves, is this discrimination useful in my life today? And that is all the Dhamma is about. Always questioning, are things useful in my life, or are they causing much more problems? Okay, so when it comes to discrimination, psychologically, there is a need, or there's a human tendency to discriminate, simply because we tend to form communities. Now, if you think about it, how we form communities is by saying, okay, you and me have something in common, and this thing that we have in common is different from the rest of the people. Now, and then with this difference, we will draw a boundary. And this forming of boundary is today what we call discrimination, based on differences. Now, but then does it mean that we don't look at differences? There are people. I mean, we are bound to be different. Myself and Virya, we are very different people. We may be similar in the way that maybe we are both males, we are both Buddhists, but there are many things about us that are different. So does it mean that we don't look at the differences? And not looking at the differences goes against Buddhism, because Buddhism wants us to know everything as it is and not attempt to delude ourselves. Now, then how do we reconcile this idea of discrimination? That's something that we will look at later on. Now, I want to just ask you, and this is something that in psychology, this is a problem in psychology in today's world, especially people of our age. Are you as a person afraid or wary of how people see you? Meaning that do you think that people's perspective of you, or your image per se, your atta, how people view your atta, do you think that is important to you? And are you constantly worrying about how people see you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Sometimes,
right?
sometimes.
Right. So it is something that that young people of today face, especially so today. I mean, in the past, I'm pretty sure people face that too. But today, especially with social media, with globalization, where everything is so public, where everything is made known to everybody else, there is a fear, or there is a constant innate feeling that what if someone see me this way? What if people think that I'm not good? What if people feel that or what if nobody wants to be my friend? And these are constant issues that the Buddha himself will look. I mean, he was looking into these problems when he talked about dukkha in the Four Noble Truths, because we can all be certain this feeling of uncertainty and fear is not a nice feeling, and I would readily any day say that this is dukkha. This is dukkha. Now, then that question will then arise. Okay, so I've already asked you about being afraid of how others see us. Now the question is, do you know why we are afraid of that? How come? How come we are so fearful of how people see us? Technically, okay, let's say today, if I'm good at cooking, for example, if I'm good at cooking, and I know that I'm good at cooking, but then there'll still be something innate within myself that goes, oh no, what if this food that I know that is good, but people around me don't like? But the thing is, I'm really very sure that my food is good, but there is still that worry of what if people don't like it, or what if people think that I'm not a good cook? Now, why do you think that happens? And that is what the Buddha did when he investigated his own mind. How come it's like that? How come I may be confident about something, but I'm still worried about why people see me in that way?
Because
Sorry?
we still, what in English ya, melekat pada atta.
Oh, okay. I have no idea what you just said. I know atta,
Attach.
but the
Ya, Philia, you translate lah.
Yeah, attached to atta.
Yeah,
I think that's what she
attached
said.
okay. So you're attached to atta, or you're attached to yourself, or your ego, or your
Yeah.
image of yourself. Now, do you know why you choose to attach to yourself? Or like maybe for example, some things matter to you. For example, maybe to some people it is important to be slim and fit. Okay, but to some people it doesn't. Okay, so then why is it that we choose what to attach to the atta? So how come some things matter to me, some things don't? Okay, so that's just something for you to think about, which I'm going to show you a very short quote, a very meaningful quote, okay, that really shows the Buddha's teachings on karma. And we can see this very, very, okay, again, karma is not like, oh, today I do something bad, and then the thunder or the lightning will strike me. Like, it's not like there is some god, some ultimate god that will be controlling this, but everything happens in the mind, and this is exactly what happens. When you touch others, you don't actually define other people. You actually define yourself. Now, why do I say that? For example, today, when I judge other people, let's say, hey, how come this guy is so, I don't know, let's say, how come, okay, let me just think of normal judgments. Okay, let's say, how come this guy is so stupid? How come he doesn't know how to use the iPad, for example? Now, when we say that, we are creating the imprint in our mind that says, oh, the default mode is that people should be good with using iPad. Now, in times where you yourself don't know how to use the iPad, you start to doubt yourself.
True.
Okay, so that is exactly how the workings of karma works. That something that you do onto other people will cause a mental imprint in your mind, and this mental imprint might potentially come back to haunt you. This is not like rocket science. This is just how the mind works. In the same way, let's say today you are embracing to other people. you say, okay, maybe you're not good at this, or maybe you're different from me, but you still deserve the love from me as a human being. Then in times where you face the same problem, you'll say, oh, actually, I am also deserving of this love. And because of that, you'll be much less afraid of how people may see you. Okay, so this goes into we are moving into how our discriminating mind works about judging others. So when we judge others, again, we don't define them, we start to define ourselves. Okay, so but then it is normal to judge others. It is normal to say we are different. So what do you think the Buddha has to say about it? So I got this from one of the suttas, Vasita Sutta, where the Buddha mentions that among humans, after he gained enlightenment and when he looked at humans in general, he realized that you can't really find much differences. So we may think that, oh, me and Eliana, we are different. But in the Buddha's eyes, we are not exactly different. The difference, or the word that he used here, is distinctions. The distinctions between humans are only spoken by convention, meaning that Eliana is conventionally a girl. I am conventionally a guy. And these are all conventions that we as humans create in order to, of course, make life easier for us. If not, we wouldn't know who is male, who is female, which toilet do I go to, and things like that. So all these are based on convention alone. Now, we as Buddhists need to recognize this. We need to recognize that when we look at fellow human beings, although there are distinctions that make us different, these differences are purely conventional. Okay, now what I mean by purely conventional is that there is a difference, but how we see this difference matter. If we see it as convention, good. But if we don't see it as convention, and when we say this difference makes us different, or worse still, this difference makes me better than you, makes me higher than you, that is where you realize that the atta will start crawling back into the picture. And we mentioned earlier, when atta starts crawling into the picture, naturally dukkha in some way will find creeping into your life. So if we don't want dukkha, we want to try to go against it by understanding how we should face situations when there are differences. Okay, so again, in life, between people, confirm there will be differences. The question is, how then do we look at these differences? Okay, so in Buddhism, whenever there are things that are not the same, there are two ways of looking at it, and you as an individual can choose whichever way you want to look at it. Of course, there is a better way. Okay, so it is this thing called differences versus diversity. Do you want to see things as being different, as in this guy is different from me, or do you want to see things in a way of diversity? We are different, but we can coexist. Okay, now I want to just pull back a bit and have a bit of reflection here. Now, whenever we say, okay, now I want you to think in your mind, something that you think is wrong. Anything. Maybe you can say anything that you think that is wrong. Maybe I don't know, maybe smoking.
Being lazy.
Sorry?
Being lazy.
Okay, being lazy, maybe. Okay, maybe being lazy to you is wrong. Now, anything that you think is wrong. Now, I want you to ask yourself, how come you would think that is wrong? Okay, so let's say today you see somebody who is lazy. Okay, now, why then do you think is wrong? You must have some basis, right? You must have some reason.
From experience.
Okay, good, from experience. So in the past, maybe we have encountered somebody who is lazy, and then they are not very nice people to work with, for example. Okay, so it is from experience. Great. Okay, now, but do you realize that there's something underlying? The underlying thing is this. The underlying thing is when you say, okay, let's say in the case of someone who is lazy, the reason why you will say that someone is lazy is because you as an individual may think that you are better than this person in that aspect. See, you will only say that someone is lazy only if you feel that I'm better than you and I'm less lazy compared to you. And that's why I think in this way. Now, you can start to see that such a mindset can be a little bit problematic as we move forward in life. Now, when I say that, you realize that there's a very strong sense of comparison. And social comparison today, as I mentioned earlier on, social comparison is one of the biggest factor of what today we call as imposter syndrome, where we are so afraid of how people see us now. And this is due to social comparison, and social comparison is due to seeing people differently. Okay, and this is what is taught in many suttas when the Buddha mentioned about contemplating on differences. Now, then if that's the case, then should we just not do it altogether? We shouldn't also. Okay. Now the question is, how then should we go about seeing it? Now, but before we go into that, I need you to try to realize something, which is that whenever we say that someone is wrong, okay, very likely it's because that person is different from us. Okay. Now I want to throw the question back to you. Someone being different from us, does that warrant them to be wrong? Means just because someone is different from us, can we say that they are wrong? Probably not. Probably not. And this is where you start to see that your own perception start to cloud how you see people. Just because they're doing something different from what you would do, you think that it's wrong. And that is the problem with our minds. We are so caught up with the way that we think that anyone that thinks differently, we say, nope, you're wrong. That is you. This is me. And I probably am thinking better than you. And that is problematic. And it's very clear, even when the Buddha spoke to people who were unenlightened, he never ever said, you foolish people, you worldlings and foolish people, you guys don't know what I'm saying. He never did that. Out of compassion, he found ways to help the person to see for themselves. The Buddha never imposed and said, you must see Dhamma in this way. You must see anicca, you must see dukkha. No, he didn't say that. He just said, you open your eyes, I show you a way, you open, you see it for yourself. And thus just now when you guys were reciting ehi pasiko, akaliko, anytime you will be able to see the Dhamma. And today, if you're able to convert differences into diversity, meaning that today if you can see things differently, instead of focusing on differences, you focus on diversity, trust me, you will feel better. Okay, and what I mean by differences now, when we look at differences, we start to compare. And the question that we always ask ourselves is, okay, for example, in the case of somebody whom is lazy, you will naturally ask yourself, why is this person even like that? Why is this person even lazy? Naturally, you ask that. And because of that, you form judgment. And with judgment, you start to form boundaries with people. You are lazy, I'm not going to associate with you. Okay, now, but if you look at things in terms of diversity, then that is where there is opportunity for understanding. And when I mean understanding, it means that I can start to see where you come from, because instead of asking why they are like that, you ask yourself, why do I think in this way? Do I have some assumptions and biases that I make? Do I or do I not? Most likely you have. And with that, you will build empathy, and instead of drawing boundaries, you start to include people. Because now you know that the reason why you think this way is because you are biased, or you hold certain assumptions that make you think in that way. Now, at this point, we can see very clearly that now there's a difference between differences and diversity. Now, it is very difficult then to move into diversity, because that's not how our mind naturally is. So I'm going to break it down so that it becomes simpler for everyone to try in your own lives. So our natural state of mind is our natural train of thought. When we first see someone who is different, we will ask ourselves, why is this person even like that? Like, who in this world even acts this way? Something like that. Okay. The next thing will be, you have this assumption that this person should be in a certain way instead of whatever that he or she is acting now. So maybe he should be hardworking instead of being lazy. He should be exercising instead of eating a lot. So something like that. And then with that, you realize that you start to reinforce the sense of atta again. You cling tightly onto what you think. Very, very, very tightly. Now, this is what I call the train of thought of difference. If we were to contemplate, or if you were to see the world differently. Now, if we were to see the world in a sense of diversity, means that now we start to change the way that we see, is that whenever you have the thought, why is this person like that? Instead of that, you ask yourself, why am I thinking in this way? Okay, now realize that from looking external, now you start to look internal. Okay, and that is where the very last part of what is now what you recited in Dhamma Nusati, what is it? Pachatang Vedi Tabu Vinyuhi. The wise for himself looks inwards. So now instead of looking outwards, you are using the Dhamma now to help you to look inwards, to ask yourself, why am I even thinking in this way? Now you're not blaming yourself, you're not blaming other people, you're just questioning your mode of thinking. Okay, and with that, instead of saying he should do this or he should do that, you then will start to ask yourself, what are some of the personal assumptions and biases that you yourself as an individual are making? There must be something, because you wouldn't hold on very tightly to something if you don't have any biases and assumptions. The question here is to be aware of these biases and these assumptions. And with that, you will then be able to conjure that mindset in you, just like me. This person probably also wants to be well, also wants to be happy, and as such, I should not discriminate this person. This person is just like me. Okay, so you realize that there are a few steps here. One is to first uncover your own biases so that you don't delude yourself by thinking that by feeling that whatever that you're thinking is absolutely right. Okay, so that's one. And then the second point, of course, it is that if you are then able to realize that you yourself are making an assumption, then you'll be able to say, this person also probably, just like me, also wants to be happy. And with that, you are then able to embrace this person, include this person within you. Okay, and this is very, very clear whenever cliques are formed. Cliques, C-L-I-Q-U-E-S. I have no idea what is the translation of that in Bahasa, but cliques, when you form groups of friends. And if you think about it, the reason why you want to form groups of friends is because you want to set boundaries between us and them. Us and them. Now, and whenever you do that, you always tend to focus on how we are similar within the group and how my group is different from another group. Then we draw the boundary. Now, if we keep doing that, you realize that people will start being divided naturally, whether is it based on color, based on race, based on nationality. If we were to focus on that, then you will realize that we all start cutting communities up. Now, and that is not the key point of the practice. The key point of the practice is to encourage people to form communities, to get together, to build this human connection. Okay, and that is where there is a need to go beyond our discriminating minds. And of course, this is most evident in the LGBTQ community. So I want to put it out there first, because I've had people asking me, oh, if you're talking about this, does it mean that you're part of this community? I'm not, I'm straight, but I think that there is a need to talk about these issues, because there are people out there that are suffering because they are being discriminated because they are part of this community. Now, as a Buddhist, or not many Buddhists would not say there, but not many Buddhists have talked about this important issue. Now, this is a rising issue that is happening all over the world in general, including Singapore. Not too sure about Indonesia, but in general, our Asian society, we are quite conservative, and because of that, we may not be too open to such different differences. Now, if we were to use the Buddhist framework to look at it again, whenever we see, let's say we see, this is extremely stereotypical, but we're going to use it as an example. Let's say if we see a female that is acting like a male, okay, someone a more masculine female, okay. Naturally, when we see somebody like that, our impression of them will not be as good as a feminine female. Okay. Now the question is, instead of, so if we were to use back this same, if we were to use back this same framework, instead of asking why is the person like that, we change and we ask ourselves, why am I thinking in this way? And if you realize, a lot of times we make a lot of assumptions regarding this community, meaning that we say, oh, they are not normal, they are abnormal, and so because of that, they are different from me, and that's why I think that they are wrong. Now, as Buddhists, we need to be very, very clear that just because someone is different from you doesn't mean that they are wrong. Okay. Now, if you think about it, just because someone is different, the person is wrong, then in the Buddha's times, all his disciples would have been wrong, because all of them were unenlightened first, which he never ever said that. He never ever mentioned that anyone, just because you are unenlightened, you are bad, you are wrong. He never ever said that. But instead, he embraced them and show them love and kindness. So in the same way as Buddhists, when we look at, let's say, for example, in this case, this LGBTQ plus community, we have to ask ourselves, how come we have this discrimination against them? We may not say it, we may not act upon it, but we may feel that way. And we know that as Buddhists, okay, no, in a conventional world, people may say, oh, you can think about it, but you don't act on it. But in Buddhism, it's a bit different. In Buddhism, we know that there's body, speech, and mind. And if your body and speech, meaning that what you speak and what you act, even if you don't do it, your mind is still running. And we know that the mind is the most important thing in Buddhism. So that's why we have to question ourselves, to ask ourselves, how come we have this kind of mindset? And you realize, because we assume normalcy, meaning that we think, okay, only if you are straight, it's normal. But if you're not straight, then you are weird, you are abnormal. But the question is, why do we think this way? So that is okay. So of course, I will not tell you why we think in that way, because that is for the individual to contemplate on your own. But the important thing that I want to bring across is, whenever we know that we are biased or we assume things, we have to ask ourselves why, and to be mindful of these biases. So of course, this can extend to other things, whether is it LGBT or is it caste. If you are familiar with Buddhist history, the Buddha was highly against the caste system because it discriminates people. So anything that discriminates, the Buddha will probably stand out and say no. Okay, including nationality. There were in the past where the Sakyan clan, which is his own clan, were against other clans, and then they were fighting and they were saying, oh, my clan is better than yours. And of course, the famous story of the Buddha that came in between and said, hey, you guys, please stop. You guys are the same. You are one people. Okay, so when it comes to many things, the nationality, race, okay, I typed wrongly here. This is not region, it's religion. There's a small typo error. Agama, so religion. So even as Buddhists, when we see people of other religions, we don't say, oh, I'm right and you're wrong. Because I do know of some religions that say that. But in Buddhism, we don't say that. All we say is that we are different people. We embrace this diversity simply because we recognize maybe the way of the Buddhist way of learning may not be suitable for you. It may be suitable for me, but it may not be suitable for you. Maybe your religion is the best way that you can learn and to be a better person. So we embrace that. Now, if we see in this way, you realize that you can very easily be compassionate, loving towards other people. But if you say being Buddhist is the best, you are not a Buddhist, so you are bad. You realize that you start to build boundaries. You start to separate yourself from other people, which is not very good for own mental health, because you know that will give rise to greed, hatred, and eventually delusion, which is your lobha, dosa, moha, which are not very good for your Dhamma practice. Okay, so with that, again, I bring this up again, quite similar to what we covered previously, that all these differences are by mere convention. And this mere convention is just because we socially accept it, meaning that we all agree upon this social contract. That's why we think in this way. But we need to recognize that this is just convention. And if you don't recognize there's convention and you think, oh, this is the absolute truth, that maybe gender is binary, you can only be male or female. But if you don't recognize that this is a contract, that this is a mutual agreement, then you will eventually, if you have this misconception, you will build up this sense of prejudice and discrimination towards people if you don't understand. So the key thing here is understanding why we think in a certain way. Okay. I know I passed the time, but just give me a very short moment, just a very quick one, which I just want to mention about karma very, very quickly, because I think a lot of people have big misconceptions. So this is the very famous line that says that karma is not about what you do, but what you think. Okay, and this is very, very, very important, because if you guys read the Dhammapada, you might have already read the very first verse, that mind is the forerunner. Mind is the forerunner. Mind is the first thing that happens. So whenever there is karma, the mind is the one that starts. So, and that is why throughout this entire sharing, the focus has always been the way that we think, the way of the mind. So karma here doesn't mean that if you do something good, that you get something good. But as I mentioned earlier on, as simple as judging somebody else. Okay, and in karma, because it's based on intention, it must be motivated and it must be a deliberate action. Okay, so if you have this deliberate active action, naturally some things will come back to you. And in what way? For instance, earlier on, when we tend to judge other people too quickly and we form judgments too quickly, we will then naturally be fearful of what others think of us. Regardless of whether they do it or not, you yourself would have experienced the forces of karma within your own mind. And that is what the Buddha meant by karma. And you guys might also know this line. I didn't include the bahasa because it's too long, but in general, it's said that we are owners of our own karma, so on and so forth. What does this mean? This means that you as an individual get to choose. Every choice that we make, it makes a difference. And how it makes a difference is that all this will cause an imprint, a chop in your mind. And this chopping will then shape how you think. And with this shaping of what you think, it starts to become you. It starts to become your atta. And that is where exercising this sense of choice is very, very important, and that there is a possibility that you can change it. And eventually, because it's karma, you can feel it. Some people say, oh, I don't know whether is it my karma. You know it, because you know when you feel happy, when you feel not very happy, it is because of something that you have done in the past, that you see things in a certain way, that you feel it. And that to me is the power of karma. It is all about exercising choice, to recognize that we as individuals have a choice. In Singapore, in Hokkien, we have this thing. Sometimes we say bo pian. I don't know if you guys know bo pian, but in Buddhism we say no such thing as bo pian. You have a choice. It's whether or not you dare to exercise that choice, and whether you're mindful enough to make yourself do that choice. So bo pian is out of the picture in Buddhism. In Dhamma, there's no such thing as bo pian, because if it's really bo pian, the Buddha wouldn't have taught the Dhamma. Then the Dhamma wouldn't have been able to transform anybody. It's because there is pian. There is no such thing as bo pian. That's why the Dhamma works. So in general, in summary, we all don't want to be unhappy. So and the way to not be unhappy is to see things clearly, to remove assumptions, to remove biases. And when we contemplate on karma, we know that based on our actions, we can change, we can improve, we can change, and we can all be better people. So as we move towards and I would like to end off with this quote from the Karaniya Metta Sutta that says that we as individuals, we should try not to treat another person differently. We should not try to cheat somebody, or we also should not despise anyone, meaning that we don't say, oh, I'm better than you, or you're better than me in any way. If we say that we are people who are practicing metta. And with that, again, from the same text, I'd like to end off with this line: Sabbe Satta Bhavantu Sukhitatta. May all beings be well and happy. And all beings here means that you don't discriminate anybody despite differences and diversity. All beings, regardless of who you are, regardless of what you believe in, regardless of your orientation, your nationality, may you always be well and happy. So thank you.
Anumodana, and thank you so much for Brother Danry for taking your time to Dhamma sharing with us. May this opportunity inspire us and lead us to become better and better. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay guys, now we will jump into the Q&A session. For those who want to ask their question, you can please kindly open your mic or just type in the chat box, and Q&A session will be open for around 15 minutes.
Yeah, I think I see somebody that has a question. Oh yes, Viria. So he have a question and he say, let's say we don't judge people. It's by. Oh, okay, so it's by somebody else.
Yeah,
okay,
Supun Yitan.
Okay, so never mind. I'll just answer the question now. So let's say we don't judge people for first impressions, but what if we start to form opinions because of our interactions and experiences with them? Okay, now for sure, we will form judgments. Now the issue is whether or not we will pull this. Okay, so let's say today we see, okay, let's say today, just now I use I'm going to use Dharma's example of someone whom is lazy. Maybe from past experience, you know that working with lazy people, right? They don't get work done, or they always submit work late. Okay, or just because someone looks lazy. Okay, now then today in a new situation where you encounter someone who is lazy, you may think, okay, this person is lazy, or you think that this person is lazy. It's normal for us to form such judgment because we already have past perceptions. Now the issue is this. The issue is, as individuals, will we say, I am going to allow what I thought in the past to cloud what I think today. So if I were to go back to the question, the question is let's say we don't form or we don't judge people from first impressions. We will judge people from first impressions, but it's whether or not we allow this to continue. Okay, so that's the first point. The second part is, but what if we start to form opinions because of our interactions and experiences with them? Now, we should always recognize that the past case and this case, while they are similar, they are extremely different. And the issue with our mind is this. Just like, okay, if anybody study computer programming, especially if, let's say, if you're into big data, you'll realize that what our mind normally do is like what AI does: pull out pattern and then model the future. So we pull out pattern from the past and we model the future. But if anybody has been looking at, let's say, things like the stock market, you will realize that such modeling from the past and pulling to the future usually is not very accurate. Usually it's not very, very accurate. So in the same way, how can we as individuals be so sure that whatever that happened in the past will again occur in the future? So you realize that it is an assumption that, okay, because I had this experience before, my next experience is also going to be like that. Now, we as individuals cannot be too sure of that. It may happen, it may very well be like that, but at that moment, we want to see things as it is instead of being biased towards or against anything. So this is where the karma comes in, the intentional volitional choices comes in, where we make this choice of saying how I'm going to see this person or how I'm going to see this situation now, not the past. And I hope that I answered that question. Now let's see if there's any more question. Okay, yes, the past does not equate to the future. Yes, and of course, if we were to delve, into Buddhist philosophy, you will realize that there are many times where the Buddha mentions that there is no such thing as past and future, simply because the past cannot be held onto anymore. The future, you also cannot hold onto it. So because of that, past and future doesn't actually exist, but it is just creations of our own minds. And then if we were to hold on to these mental creations, or in Buddhism we call sankhara, if we were to hold on to this conditioned phenomena, naturally dukkha is going to come crawling into your life again. So yes. Yes. Okay, any other questions relating to discrimination and how, actually, I'm not too sure how is the openness towards, say, like the LGBT community in Indonesia?
Yeah, I think we say the same thing, LGBT also.
Okay, but is there a great discrimination against the community in general? Because I think that in some countries, in Singapore also, we have some laws that that kind of prevent people from wanting to share that they are part of this community.
Yeah, in Indonesia it's also the same. It's still conservative, right? I mean, people here still think that LGBT is bad, but but the fact is it's actually not, right? Whatever makes you happy, then do it, right?
Correct. Yeah,
and also I've ever heard from my friend from another religion that said LGBT is wrong based on their
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've also had friends that are of another faith, and then they eventually turned to to the Buddhist faith, because the unfortunate truth is that they were prejudiced and they were discriminated there. So although I had deep faith in that certain religion, but then just because I have this sexual orientation, then I'm being discriminated.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is quite a sad thing. But of course, do you know that such things also might happen in the Buddhist community, but may not be relating to sexual orientation. For example, I do know of some people that say, oh, just because you are practicing maybe a different school of Buddhism from me. So let's say I'm practicing the Theravada school, and let's say you're practicing the Mahayana school, and it's, oh, on that basis we are different. So because we are different, I'm going to discriminate against you. So in Buddhism, there is no such thing as that. There's no such discrimination. There's no such looking up or looking down upon. So I think that is very important. Beyond sexual orientation, there are also other things that we tend to discriminate against. And when we discriminate, again, you will experience this for yourself, that dukkha will start creeping in. So if your end goal is to not allow dukkha to creep into your life, then you know that you may want to consider reducing the sense of discrimination within you, and thus going against this, what I call the discriminating mind, going beyond it. Yeah. Let me see if are there any other questions.
Yes, anybody?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, whether we can.
Whether we can.
Okay, my internet is this good? I'm not sure about my internet connection. Am I clear? No, I'm not
Yes.
very
Clear.
We're clear.
Yes.
Always clear. Nice.
Let me try again. Is this better?
Yeah.
Yes.
Seru nih guys. Seru nih guys.
Oh, okay. That's great. Okay, awesome. Yeah. So I'll just go ahead and if I lag or anything, just remind me and ask me to repeat. Yeah. Hi,
Okay.
Danry. Good to meet you. My name is Weekend. I'm from Malaysia.
Hello.
Yeah, great. This is a great topic. I think it's worth reflecting, right? Many of us. I mean, it's worth reflecting on this topic. Many of us might not think too much about the connection between ourselves, right, our identity, our atta, and this idea of discrimination and looking down on others or despising others. So this is a good topic for us to reflect on. Yeah. So thanks for sharing. My question is, how do we distinguish between like discernment and discrimination? So what I'm trying to get at is like discerning between wholesome and unwholesome like states of mind. Wait out. Sorry, my connection. Am I back? Okay, I think I'm back. Yeah, I'm back. Yeah, good. So I'm talking about discerning between like wholesome and unwholesome states of mind. So for example, I mean, LGBT was one of the areas of concern today, right? In the discussion today. In the area of sexual ethics, right? Okay, yeah, thanks, Virya. Yeah, in the area of sexual ethics, the Buddha also talked about, sexual conduct, sexual misconduct, for example.
Yes, correct.
So, like, even putting the LGBT issue aside, we might say someone who is like very promiscuous, or someone who commits adultery, right? Someone who commits adultery outside of marriage and so on. We might say, yeah, that is sexual misconduct. And some people are very okay with that, right? We might say that's very liberal sexual ethics. Right? We say, oh, some people are very okay to have like what did you call it, like open relationships? They commit adultery and so on. And so from the Buddhist perspective, that would be something unwholesome, right? Like sexual misconduct. How do we distinguish between like discernment and discrimination? Would we call that discrimination and so on? Yeah. So I think I think you kind of get my question. Yeah.
So I think that's a very interesting question. So discernment, usually the term panya or prajna in Sanskrit that maybe more people are more familiar has been translated as discernment, or and the main thing is to know between kusala, which is wholesome, or akusala, the unwholesome mental states. Now, in Buddhism, as I mentioned earlier on, the purpose of practicing the Dhamma is to free ourselves from suffering, to attain a state of freedom of mind. And this is done by being able to see things clearly. So again, the end goal is to eradicate suffering. Now, anything, or in Buddhism, anything that furthers this goal of ending suffering will be considered as kusala. Whatever that moves away from it will be then deemed as akusala. Now, the question is this. The question is, when it relates to people, more often than not, discrimination between people will lead to more akusala states, meaning that you attach to the self, you attach to the way that you think, rather than understanding from someone else's point of view. Now, then how is this different from discernment? Now, for discernment, we look at individual mental states, meaning that we are looking at how the mind works, whether or not this will give rise to kusala or akusala states. Now, when it comes to this, I can't remember which sutta it is, but there were texts where the Buddha mentioned on how, while someone has done a misdeed, for example, let's say in the case of kami sumichachara, let's say for someone that has conducted sexual misconduct, that does not make the person a bad person, but it is the act that is wrong. Okay, so and that is why just now I purposely chose to mention on karma, because karma focuses on the action, not the doer. So just because we did something that may not be kusala, may not be wholesome, that does not make us an unwholesome person. So I think what distinguishes discernment and discrimination is external and is usually on the assumption that the person is like that. Discernment, on the other hand, accepts change, accept that the person has a potential to be better, and is usually internal, meaning that we look at our own mental states, our own kusala and akusala. So I think in that sense, based on whether or not it is internal or external, and then whether or not it is between people or is it within ourselves, that we can distinguish between kusala and not kusala, between discernment and discrimination. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, thank you so much, Danry, for the
thank you.
I've got to go now because
okay.
Yeah, I've got to go now because I've got another event. But I want to get in touch with you. I'll talk to Eliana about it. Yeah, because we could collaborate in the future perhaps for an event, for a sutta study. Because I love how you use the suttas to elaborate on your perspective. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I do that in our activities too. So
nice.
Let's get in touch. I'll talk to Eliana about it. Thank you so much, Danry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you
very
brothers
much.
and sisters. Sadhu.
All right, thank you.
Bye, we can.
All right, let's see if there's any other questions. Okay, so I think Brother Weekend's question had to be the last. So yes, so again, thank you everybody for listening to my little short sharing. And I hope that you benefit from it. And yes,